Good morning.
So if you've been following audiophile YouTube for the past couple of weeks, you've probably noticed the Apple AirPods Pro 3 are a little bit controversial, and specifically the sound quality of them. Now, I just want to say up front, if you're happy with the sound quality of the AirPods Pro 3, don't let us ruin it for you. The point isn't that anybody is right or wrong about the sound of these earphones. The point is that Apple's just kind of not confronting a fundamental truth about sound quality, and that's that it's different for everybody. People have different preferences, and it kind of stands to common sense, but it's also been supported by scientific studies trying to find out what is the ideal sound signature. And usually they always find that people have different preferences in terms of the levels of bass and levels of treble. But the AirPods Pro 3, like the other ones, these are gonna be like the best-selling earphones in the world. They'll sell millions, but there's only one sound signature, and it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, in this episode of Waveguide, I'm going to show Apple how I would fix the AirPods Pro 3 by specifically adding some powerful EQ functions into iOS. And I know that sounds maybe like anathema to Apple, but I want to do it in a way that fits in with Apple's design system that is very functional and usable by someone who doesn't understand EQ, and importantly, in a way that takes advantage of Apple's unique technology functions. Tall task? Well, shout out to HiFiGo for making waveguide videos like this one possible. HiFiGo is a magical place online where you can buy everything for personal audio, from IEMs, headphones, digital audio players, desktop source gear. They've got it all. So if you want to check them out, of course, I've got them linked in the description down below. But with that said, let's go to Craig to learn more about what I'm calling intelligent sound profiles. I don't know who Craig is, but I did want to start by just kind of addressing the elephant in the room, which is would Apple even do this? Why haven't they done it yet? And I think there's just a lot of assumption. I had these assumptions that Apple just generally doesn't like to give you a lot of customization and personalization, especially for these really niche sorts of features. This isn't a very Apple-like thing to do. But as I was digging into the operating system of iOS for this video, I actually kind of realized that that's not actually the case. Apple does give you some really niche customizations. For example, I don't know if you've ever dived into this stuff, but there is this focus modes thing where you can go into here and change how iOS gives you notifications, etc. And there's not only just different modes of it, you can dive in. Hold on, let me figure this out. You could dive into really deep settings and get super nerdy. This is something I've never even looked at. I suspect that 90% of people have never looked at these settings in iOS. And again, this is, I feel more niche than what I'm talking about. Being able to personalize your sound quality, I think we can make that argument. Another thing would be in the camera app on iOS, they added photographic styles, right? And that's a really cool feature if you're really into personalizing the styles of your photos. You want to customize your tones. But again, that is a pretty niche feature that I'm glad it exists, and frankly, it gives me hope that this niche-ish feature, this level of personalization that I'm asking for with sound quality, is something Apple might actually give to us. Now, here's something I'll say up front, is that I accept that EQ is difficult. I've done a video series on how to EQ headphones. I guess I'll have it linked up here. And I'll be honest, even I don't think I'm very good at equalizing music. I think music producers are probably the people who are best at it, and that is a pretty narrow market. But obviously, again, everybody wants to personalize their music. So we do kind of end up getting these half-baked solutions like this. So these are the EQ options that are built into the Apple Music app. And this is just bottom of the barrel type of EQ. If you want to know exactly why I don't like this type of EQ, again, I covered that in the video series that I talked about. But there's also, I know some people might say that there's the headphone accommodations built into iOS which could be an alternative to EQ. They're not. Check out Griffin's video recently on the headphone show where he dived into exactly why headphone accommodations are not a substitute for EQ. So why hasn't Apple really given us EQ features yet? My suspicion is just they don't have a great idea, a great execution for doing it. But I think I do. So I've actually put together a product demo that we're going to walk through in a little bit. But before I do that, I wanted to just highlight what are my goals for this project. And of course, my starting goal was to fix the sound quality of the AirPods Pro, or maybe more specifically, personalize the sound quality of the AirPods Pro 3. And I want to do it in a way that is system-wide, right? It's not just limited to sound that comes out of the Apple Music app. And while we're at it, I would love to be able to have that level of customization and personalization over any headphone that I connect to my iPhone. And of course, because I actually want Apple to do this, I have to make it user-friendly, easy to use, but also because I want to use it, I want to have the ability to dive in and really control the nitty-gritty of parametric EQ in a way that doesn't risk losing the user. And finally, my last goal is I wanted to make use of Apple's kind of unique technology. So again, this is just a solution that Apple might actually be interested in implementing. With that said, let's go to the product demo. So I've actually built a prototype, like an interactive prototype that you can actually play around with if you want to. I've got it linked in the description down below. But of course, we'll walk through it together so I can kind of explain my thought process with this thing. So like I mentioned before, I want this to be system-wide parametric EQ. I don't want it to be limited to just the music app. So to do that, I've got it integrated into the iOS Control Center. And I've actually modeled a lot of this functionality off of something that Apple's already done with their focus modes. But here we're adding a new button for what I'm calling, again, intelligent sound profile. So you tap into that, and here's where you would be able to select different sound profiles, right? A couple of quick clarifications. First of all, hi, I'm Mark Ryan. My name's not Craig. Two, while I'm doing this demo showing it with the AirPods Pro 3, I want this to work for any audio product that you have connected to your iPhone. So here at the top of the product demo, where it shows AirPods Pro 3, my idea is that you would tap into that and you would be able to select any audio output device that is currently connected to the phone. So that could be another Bluetooth headphone, it could be a HomePod speaker, Apple TV, or even like a USB audio device. Basically, you'd be able to create intelligent sound profiles for any device that your phone can play audio to. So by default, you would start on the standard sound profile. This is the way that the AirPods Pro 3 sound out of the box. But you could imagine that Apple would add an option for classic sound, which would make the AirPods Pro 3 sound exactly like the AirPods Pro 2. It's 100% possible they could do that. And then you can imagine that they might even cook up a bunch of other sound profiles that you would be interested in using out of the box. So while I want these intelligent sound profiles to be available for any audio product that you attach to the iPhone, one clarification is that these presets, in this case I'm showing a classic sound preset that's going to make the AirPods Pro 3 sound like the AirPods Pro 2. These would ostensibly only work for Apple's own products, like the AirPods Pro 3. But where the real magic happens is with custom. Now, as you might expect, the custom profile gives you a lot of options to personalize the sound of your music. And it would start with kind of traditional and recognizable bass, mid-range, and treble sliders. Now, I say that these things are recognizable because you see bass, mid-range, and treble sliders on a lot of like audio equipment, especially from like 20 years ago. But I think most people, most normal music listeners have a good sense of what bass is. Some people know what treble is, but a lot of people frankly don't. If I use the word treble around non-audiophiles, they don't really know what I'm talking about. In mid-range, well, not even audiophiles know what mid-range means. So what you might have noticed is that instead of labeling them as bass, mid-range, and treble, I've instead labeled them with the instruments that are being played in that section of the music. And here's where I think this is actually kind of cool. Using Apple Intelligence, they could basically analyze the music that you're listening to and do this in real time, right? Not just have canned labels for 20 hertz. They could analyze your music, say that this EQ label is defaulting to 20 hertz, and it could tell you exactly which instruments or which parts of the music are going to be affected by this slider. Same with the mid-range, we've got rhythm guitars up here, and then in the treble frequencies, we've got cymbals and harmonics. This is something I think is absolutely viable with Apple's intelligence built into iOS, and I think it would make this EQ really, really cool. So of course, as you can imagine, you could then, customize your EQ. You could push up the bass guitar, make the bass guitar sound louder. Same with the rhythm guitar, make that sound louder. And maybe with the cymbals and the harmonics, maybe you want to dial that one down a little bit. So you get a little visualization up here of what your customization is doing. So I wouldn't limit this to just 3 bands, right? If you need more than just 1 bass, 1 mid-range, and 1 treble slider, I've got a button down here to add a new control, which would basically add new EQ filters, which you could then customize in the same way. Or you could imagine a new control would allow you to do things like apply sound compression or, maybe normalize sound levels across different apps. That would actually be really nice and functional, but at this point, audiophiles are maybe a little frustrated because they're just seeing these basic sliders. And what audiophiles want is we want to dive into specifying the frequency with like frequency-specific precision, specifying the Q factor of those EQ filters, targeting those frequencies, and then of course specifying the decibel gain, which I've actually got a solution for that as well. So if you tapped into any of these filters, you would expose the full range of controls for each filter, right? We've got the hertz, the Q factor, and the gain level. And check this out. So we've got the bass guitar label here, which Apple Intelligence has, deduced from analyzing the music at 20 hertz. If I adjust this to, let's say, 120 hertz, it's no longer going to be the bass guitar, or it might be depending on your music, but the instrument that's being targeted changes. So you could have this update dynamically to show you and reflect exactly what your EQ is doing. And with that feature, this would be the best EQ tool I've ever used before. It would allow me to personalize my sound in a way that I've never been able to before, even as someone who does this stuff all the time. And once you've got your EQ profile saved, again, this thing would be automatically reapplied to the AirPods the next time you reconnect them. It's going to be applied system-wide. And if for whatever reason you don't want it to be applied system-wide, we've got a solution for that as well. For any of these intelligent sound profiles, you'd be able to drill in and actually customize the scope of the profile. So you can make it so that it applies to all media, or you could say that this EQ only applies to the currently playing app, which would be my music app. Or you could imagine maybe wanting to create a custom profile that applied only to podcasts. You could add a new profile and customize it for that. And that way you've got now system-wide parametric EQ or app-specific parametric EQ that re-enables itself automatically, and cherry on top is that it could be synced across devices. Apple could use their iCloud stuff to make it so that this works on your Mac, your iPhone, your iPad, everything. And that is exactly how I would fix the Apple AirPods Pro 3. Look, it took years for Apple to actually make a calculator app for the iPad. And I think it was just because Apple couldn't think of an interesting, unique way of doing a calculator app on an iPad until they did. So I'm really not surprised that we don't have system-wide EQ on iPhone, because it's kind of hard to think of an interesting, unique way of doing it, but I think this is it. Apple, let us customize sound. We know that people want to. You can do it. And again, shout out to HiFiGo for making waveguide videos like this one possible. If you want to check out HiFiGo, show your support, I've got them linked in the description down below. And while you're down there, if you haven't yet, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, join me on Discord, also linked down below. And I'll catch you in the next super review. Cheers.
Joined with the force of reviews, we now have the tools to brave the misleading world of audio fools. Hey, this review is super, and so are you. Grab your headphones, sniff a graph, and share your thoughts in this pursuit. Let's get into the future.